Good morning and welcome to another edition of Carpod Church on a morning that is much calmer than the night before. The storms have settled, the wind has died down, and the Bray is beginning to surface from its slumber. And you may notice that my voice is a bit muffled this morning. It is because I'm wearing not a face mask, a face covering, but it was a mask in my day. When I was growing up, we used to play with my brothers and sisters. We used to play all sorts of games, imagination games. And one of the things was there was a good guy and there was a bad guy, cops and robbers. And one of us would be the robber, and we'd wear a mask and we'd pretend to be stealing. And we would make we'd make a whole sort of day's activity out of this lifestyle of being chased by the police and that. So I mention all of this because it's quite easy for us as we reflect on what it is to be church in a very different world to look back at the early church with some sort of nostalgia and think, gosh, wasn't it amazing? And it was amazing. I mean, thousands of people were coming to faith. People were being healed. The disciples were showing incredible courage. There was a real sense of God's presence and God's power at work. So it was very exciting, but it wasn't all perfect, and it wasn't all plain sailing, nor is it now, as we know. And back then, as we said before, there was a time very much in the early years of the church where everybody was so moved by the Spirit that they began to share things, not just their food or their belongings, but they would actually sell what they had. Some people would sell a house, some people would sell a field. Joseph, called Barnabas, one of the apostles, he actually sold a field. He gave all the money to the church. And that was great because that meant that they could provide for the poor around them and those who needed support at that time. But there was a couple, and they're always remembered 2,000 years later as people who did a bad thing, but their names are associated with that forever, really now. And it's Ananias and Sapphira. And they were a couple who had joined the church. They were new to the church. And they were really amazed and engrossed by this community of faith that was building up. And they noticed that some of the people in the church were selling what they had, and they were giving it all to the church for the poor. And they decided that it was time for them to sell a property that they had, but they were unsettled about this. They weren't sure what to do. So they made a decision. They said that they would give some of the money to the church, which was fine. I mean, nobody was being forced to give up everything. Nobody was being forced to surrender all their valuables or anything like that. This was a movement of the Spirit more than a decree of the church. But of course, what they did was they decided they would pretend to give all that they had earned to the church. And they would do that so that they would increase in standing among the community. They would look good. They would be front and centre. They'd be praised. They'd be lauded as very generous people. And of course, those of you who know the story know that it ended very badly for them, as the truth of what they were doing, of the fact that they were stealing not from the church but actually from God, really had its ultimate reward in that. And I mention all of this not because I am overly focused or concerned about money, but actually because it speaks to the heart of one of the problems the church has. The church is filled with people like you and me, who make mistakes, people who make choices, and we think we're doing the right thing, and we have to realize at some point, you know what, we've made a terrible mistake, we've caused pain, we've caused hurt, whatever it is we have done. And I was thinking about all of this when I was looking at this cloth. Because don't forget, the context of Ananias and Sapphira's decision was actually the generosity and the sharing of others. And every time I look at this cloth, I think back to a young boy. He's a young man by now, who, when I met him in Uganda, and I just arrived in the searing sun, very unlike what we're enjoying and enduring at the moment. And I was pink-skinned, and I don't think I'd even remembered to bring sun cream or anything. And we were walking around the school in Kampala, and this young boy came up and he started to give me this. And I said, no, thank you. I hadn't even bought any change with me that day. I thought I can't afford to buy something from this boy. I was pushing him back. He said, no, you need to take this. I thought that's a bit pushy, but I decided I'd actually, keep saying no. And then one of the leaders came up and said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, well, it's just he wants me to buy this and I don't have the money, but I also wasn't sure whether it was okay to give him the money. And he started talking to the boy and says, no, he doesn't want you to buy this. He's actually giving you this for your head. He has seen that your head has very little hair and he has noticed the need for you to cover up. And so he is giving you this as a gift. Now that just broke my heart and it broke my soul, to be honest, too, because I had gone into that situation with all sorts of assumptions and presumptions, and I had thought I understood everything that was happening. But it was even more remarkable kindness and generosity, because it turned out that boy's parents had recently died. His mum had only died a day or two before. And here he was at school, because education really matters, and also thinking of somebody else. And you see, when God's Spirit moves in us, and when we surrender to God's Spirit and God's plan, He does incredible things through us. Years later, I still treasure this cloth. It reminds me of my own presumptiveness and my own assumptions, but it also reminds me of the generosity and the love that God's people have for each other. And in the midst of all that is challenging us at the moment, surely that is what church is all about. Have a good day.